Thank you again, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. I'm going to first give you a brief summary on the current work activity the Secretariat of the Stockholm Convention is undertaking related to the guidance on alternatives to PFOS, its salts, PFOS-F, and the related chemicals. And these activities follow up the recommendations and decisions taken both by the PFOS Review Committee at its 10th meeting in 2014 and the meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Stockholm Convention that took place in May 2015. To give you a bit of background on PFOS and its related chemicals, they were listed under Annex B with acceptable purposes and specific exemptions following the fourth meeting of the Conference of the Parties, and that is in decision SC4/17. At its fifth meeting, the Conference of the Parties, by decision SC5/5, the conference adopted a work program on brominated diphenyl ethers and PFOS and its related chemicals. The decision text is available in the link that you have available in the slide in front of you. At its seventh meeting, the Conference of the Parties of the Stockholm Convention, by Stockholm Convention 7/5, on the evaluation of PFOS, its salts, and PFOS-F pursuant to paragraphs 5 and 6 of Annex B to the Convention, also made several decisions related to these chemicals. I'm just going to highlight some of the main outcomes of this Conference of the Parties and decision 7/5. The Conference of the Parties welcomed the report on the assessment of alternatives to PFOS and its related chemicals that was carried out by the Persistent Organic Pollutants Review Committee, and also welcomed the report by the Secretariat on the evaluation of the information on PFOS and its related chemicals. The Conference of the Parties, by the same decision, requested the Secretariat to revise the format for the collection of information on alternatives to the use of PFOS and its related chemicals, taking into account the recommendation of the committee and comments made by the Conference of the Parties at its seventh meeting. This revised format will be made available by the Secretariat, and it will be used for the evaluation of PFOS and its related chemicals to take place at the ninth meeting of the Conference of the Parties. The Conference of the Parties also requested the Secretariat to continue to support the process set out in the Annex to Decision SC6/4 to enable the Conference of the Parties to undertake the evaluation of PFOS and its related chemicals, and also requested the Secretariat in supporting parties undertaking activities to collect and submit information required for the process of evaluation. The Conference of the Parties also requested to the Secretariat to further promote the exchange of information, including information provided by parties and others on alternatives to PFOS and its related chemicals, and support parties subject to the availability of resources in undertaking activities to collect and submit information required for the evaluation of PFOS and its related chemicals. Following decision POPROC 10/4 on the process for the evaluation of PFOS, its salts, and PFOS-F, and also decision POPROC 10/5 on the guidance on alternatives to PFOS and its related chemicals, the PFOS Review Committee decided at its 10th meeting to establish an intersessional working group to prepare a proposal for preparing a revision of the guidance on alternatives to PFOS and the related chemicals that consolidates the information on alternatives to these chemicals. The proposal of preparing a revised guidance has two purposes. The first one is to propose the contents for a revised and consolidated document in accordance with decisions SC 6/7 and POPROC 10/5, which incorporates information contained in the guidance document on alternatives to PFOS, its salts, and PFOS-F and the related chemicals, and information contained in the technical paper on the identification and assessment of alternatives to the use of PFOS and the related chemicals in open applications, the report on the assessment of alternatives to PFOS, the fact sheets on alternatives to PFOS, and any other pertinent information submitted by parties and observers previously and in the future. The different documents that will be used as reference to prepare this consolidated document are highlighted here in the slide, and you can have access directly to the website of the Secretariat where these documents are contained. The second purpose of this proposal is to determine how the revised and consolidated document can contribute to the next regular evaluation at the 9th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to take place in May 2019, in accordance with the process set out in Decision SC 6/4 and the amended schedule for the evaluation as set out in the Annex to Decision SC 7/5. The proposed outline for this revision of the guidance on PFOS and related chemicals has been developed by the intersessional working group of the POPs Review Committee between its 10th and 11th meetings. And the schedule followed the work plan that you can see on the slide in front of you. The proposal was prepared by the Secretariat with support from a consultant, and comments were collected from the working group throughout the intersessional period. The draft proposal will be made available for consideration of the POPs Review Committee at its 11th meeting to take place from 19 until 23rd of October 2015 in Rome, Italy. The document containing the draft proposal to prepare the guidance will be made available in the upcoming days at the website of the convention. For those of you who had the opportunity to participate in the intersessional work of this particular proposal, we appreciate the comments that were submitted to incorporate in the proposal. And for those of you who are interested in participating once the committee makes a decision on the proposal, that will commence after the meeting of the committee throughout the intersessional period between the 11th meeting and the 12th meeting to take place in 2016. Thank you for your attention, and now we pass the floor for the presentation by Martin Jensen.
Thank you, Mario. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I would like to present an overview of the chemistry and use of alternatives to PFOS. I will first present a short introduction and then go into the functionality of PFOS in a number of applications, turn to a number of alternatives, and then pass on to some results of the evaluation we carried out the year before, and finalize with some conclusions and recommendations. There is a general guidance on alternatives, which is compiled in POPROC 5 document 10, ed. 1. And that general guidance describes the steps in the identification and evaluation of the alternatives. It contains chapters on the identification of alternatives, the assessment of the availability and feasibility, for instance, delivered through parties to the convention and to other research and reports. It focuses on the assessment of risks related to the alternatives. Those results were presented to Perfluorooctane, and it contains further chapters on social and economic assessment and evaluation of the alternatives. The background of the evaluation is a COP decision which says that the need for PFOS should be evaluated every 4 years. Currently there were 8 acceptable purposes and 12 specific exemptions. During the last COP in May 2015, it showed that for a number of registered exemptions, there was no need for registration anymore. No parties had registered for a prolongation of those exemptions, and those were the exemptions for carpets, leather and apparel, textiles, paper and packaging, coatings, and rubbers and plastics. I do not know for sure if that has already been incorporated in the convention annexes, but Mario might provide a little bit more information on that if necessary. When we look to the functionality of PFOS in a number of applications, we might ask, what is the problem? Precisely, why is PFOS used to solve that problem, and how does it work precisely? And I will give 4 examples. The first one is for aviation hydraulic fluid. The second one is for the pesticide use of PFOS. The third one for chromium plating, and the last one for firefighting foams. To start with the hydraulic fluids, PFOS has been used in hydraulic fluids according to 2 sources, which was the Wikipedia website in a recent published document on the Skydrow story, which says that actually it was incorporated in phosphate ester hydraulic fluids in the 1940s, because those hydraulic fluids leaked from the tubings and caused ignition. And well, we don't like that in airplanes, so that was the reason why it was added. We might ask if there are alternatives to the function of PFOS, or if those ignition sources can be prevented in another way. There is currently an exemption for the use of PFOS for leaf cutting ants, which is registered by Brazil. When we search in the handbook of pesticides, we find out that sulfluramide, which is actually the formulation, the perfluorooctane sulfonamide, is transferred to NDES, and NDES is known to have a mitochondrial, to be a mitochondrial uncoupler, and it's also an extremely powerful surfactant, which might disrupt the membrane integrity of the insects for which the pest is being meant. Chromium plating is a little bit different story. When chromium plating is carried out, it produces gas bubbles which rise to the surface of the plating bath, where those bubbles burst and propel chromium-6 mist into the air. And PFOS is being used in those baths to reduce the surface tension and to reduce the size of the gas bubbles, preventing the release of chromium-6, or at least reducing the emission of chromium-6. In firefighting foam, PFOS is used in specific firefighting foams, the aqueous film forming foams, which are water-based. It frequently contains hydrocarbon-based surfactant, such as sodium alkyl sulfate, and a fluorosurfactant, such as fluorotelomeres, or PFOA or PFOS, and those have the ability to spread over the surface like a kind of film. When we summarize those functionalities, then we find out that actually in hydraulic fluids it's used to reduce fire risks. In pesticides it's being used because it works like a mitochondrial uncoupler and a surfactant. In chromium plating it's used by a combination of surfactant and the persistence of PFOS, because those chromium baths are quite harsh environments. And in firefighting foam it works as a surfactant and as a film forming substance. When we now turn to the alternatives, chromic acid beds used for hard chromium plating is quite reactive and oxidizing, and PFOS is used because it's very resistant to that environment and it has an extremely low surface tension. It was stated in a report in 2011 that it's quite difficult to find alternatives for such environments because they must fulfill the reduction of the surface tension of those processes, and the substance must also be quite resistant to the environment. I know in a number of applications chromium-6 has been replaced by chromium-3, but there are a number of applications where it seems that it has not been possible to turn from chromium-6 to chromium-3 currently. In firefighting foam, the alternative must be suitable for Class B fires, fires of liquid fuels. It must enable film formation, and we might consider that for training foams, it might be better to use non-PFOS containing training foams. When we have a further look to the alternatives, we might think of other processes. For instance, in photography, PFOS has been used to make a smooth surface like film forming. But quite a number of photograph techniques has now been used to digital photographs where no printing is needed anymore. So PFOS is not used in those applications. When we turn to chemical alternatives, we should look for a comparable functionality as has been shown in the previous slides. In the evaluation carried out during last 1.5 years, it showed up that no chemical alternatives were identified for 6 out of the 20 exemptions and acceptable purposes, for instance for chemically driven oil production, for photo imaging, and for certain medical devices. The alternatives which has been identified are quite variable in characteristics. There were 20 fluorinated substances like 6,2-FTOH, 6,2-FMA. There were 22 non-fluorinated substances like D4, D5, and D-isopropyl-naphthalene. There were 9 pesticides for the pesticide use like fipronil, abamectin, and chlorpyrifos. And there were 12 polymers identified like polyfox and capstone. Those alternatives can be found in the Perfluorooctane report on PFOS alternatives, which has been released last year in 2014. A brief summary of the technique which has been used for screening of the 45 identified alternatives. We carried out a preliminary evaluation where we selected 48 substances which were studied in a second screening, and this resulted in one substance in class 1, which we thought might be a persistent organic pollutant. One substance ended in class 2, where we did not have enough information to identify whether it is a persistent organic pollutant, but there was some suspicion on this substance. 34 substances, the POP characteristics could not be identified because a lot of information was lacking, and of 18 substances we found that the information we had did not point that the substance would be characterized as a persistent organic pollutant. Well, those results can be found in POPROC document 10 in 7 for the persons who want more information on the technique and on the results. Now turning on to the conclusions, there is a large variety of applications for PFOS, and actually those are summarized or listed in Convention Annex B. To find alternatives for those applications is not as simple as the crop pest combinations alternatives, because no registration like in pesticide is being needed in most countries. A number of applications are related to surfactant characteristics and persistency, like the chromium plating, the pesticide use and the firefighting use. In those applications we might say that PFOS is often used in specific areas for heavy duty applications. In those cases it's recommendable to have some insight in the chemical technology that is being used, because in that case we can say a little bit more where PFOS can be replaced and where some more information is needed to replace PFOS. For a number of applications, no alternatives have been identified. When we have a proper look at those alternatives, the identity is not always clear. An example are the hydraulic fluids, where PFOS is being replaced by a PFAS, but we do not know which one. In the information we had on the firefighting foams, 22 out of 24, we could not identify which substance was used because of confidentiality. When we know the identity of the alternatives, the toxicity, bioaccumulation and persistence characteristics are not always available. And when we have a proper look at the alternatives, one substance is likely to meet the POP criteria, which is day 4. One substance had equifocal data, which is chlorpyrifos. For 34 substances, data were lacking, and 18 substances were not likely to meet all the POP criteria. To finalize, I want to provide a statement that we have to be keen on the characteristics of the alternatives as well when phasing them in. And I think that's the last slide. Thank you.